is the role of religion in our ever-changing world? From the News Channel 5 network, this is Issues of Faith.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Issues of Faith. I'm Ben Hall. Very good show today. We are going to be talking about the rise of Christian film. And we have with us a well-known producer, director, actor. And we're happy to have with us David A.R. White, most recently in God's Not Dead. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So out from California, here for the K-Love Awards that were recently given to your movie. But I want to talk broadly about Christian film in Hollywood and kind of where we are now, where it's been, where you may see it going. What do you see right now in Hollywood as far as Christian film?
I mean, this year has been interesting because, you know, Hollywood's been saying for the last 6-7 months that this would be the year of the Bible. And so nobody knew how the year of the Bible would go, you know. But obviously the Son of God came out and started the year really well. And then we were blessed to come out next, God's Not Dead. And then we had another movie called Mom's Night Out that my wife and I helped develop, and which just came out on Mother's Day, and so it's "And Heaven Is Real," and you know, it's been an interesting year to see how the moviegoers really are. You know, we always say if you want more of this content, go buy a ticket, because you're basically casting your vote, saying I want to see more of this, and so they've been doing it, and it's really been cool.
So it's good. I mean, we are seeing more of it. And I guess to get the best sense, I want to get a sense of kind of your career track. So you moved out to Hollywood when you were 19 years old. Mm-hmm. And your first job was not in Christian film, right?
No, my first job was on a show. I was out there for 6 months and didn't know anybody, and you know, it was one of those. I moved to Venice Beach on the boardwalk, and you know, I'm straight from Kansas. I grew up as a Mennonite. I don't know if you don't know what a Mennonite is. I always say the Mennonites make the Mormons look like a pack of Hell's Angels.
So pretty straight-laced.
Yeah, very straight-laced. I saw one movie in the theater the first 18 years of my life. So I was not at all in the movie industry, but I had this little dream that I believe that God put inside of me, and so I took a big chance, and I moved to Los Angeles at 19 without knowing anybody. And 6 months later, I ended up on a show called Evening Shade with Burt Reynolds. And so I just went on there with one line, but Burt kind of took me under his wing, so to speak, and developed my character and kept bringing me back for close to 4 years.
And then how did you get into Christian film? And
then my first summer off, I got offered to do a little movie called Second Glance, and I played a high schooler, and I was the lead of that film. And then pretty much it was interesting because I kept getting these movies every single year by all the major organizations, and I thought I was only going to do one Christian movie and then just kind of go back to the mainstream thing, but God kind of opened the door to continue on in that way, and I proceeded almost to do about one a year for like the last 20 years. And
your career has given you an opportunity to kind of see the growth of Christian film.
Yeah.
I mean, initially, your audience, you said you started out doing these 50-minute type movies, and maybe your audience was more Sunday school classes. I mean, maybe you were marketing more toward, okay, this Sunday school class is going to get this video, and they'll discuss it. Now it is much more mainstream, right? I mean, what have you seen as far as the change?
Well, even in the 90s, I was always saying it seemed like the Christian movie industry was 20 years behind the Christian music industry. And it's been an interesting parallel to see how, you know, like the Christian music industry blew up in the 80s. And so you have the movies now coming in 2000 plus is when they started hitting the theaters and becoming like the feature films. So that's last night was the K-Love Awards, and it was an interesting combination of the music industry with this was the first year that they actually had the movies there, and God's Not Dead won Best Inspirational Movie, and so that was a cool combination, you know, combining of the two.
And I want to talk about God's Not Dead. You play a pastor in that movie. We're going to play a clip here in a moment, but tell us a little bit about that movie.
Yeah. God's Not Dead it centers around a college student who is being discriminated against in the university setting for his faith, and so he's forced to defend his faith. But along with that, there's 6 other storylines, and one of them of which is mine, you know, and they all intersect in a really cool way. And I play this pastor who feels like he's been put on the shelf, who doesn't have a purpose in his life, that nothing is happening happening, and then we find out at the end of the movie, obviously he intersects with the main storyline and has a very, you know, meaningful purpose just at the right time. And I think God has a way of working that in our lives that is so true. You know, whenever we feel discouraged and feel like we're put on the shelf, he says, just keep following me, be obedient, and I will give you the desires of your heart.
Well, let's take a look at that clip. Then we'll come back and talk about how it's doing, and again, what that means, you know, for Hollywood and Christian film. But let's take a look. God's Not Dead.
I want to think about a different instructor. Come on, man, it can't be that bad.
Think Roman Coliseum, people cheering for your death.
I'm Professor Radisson. This is Philosophy 150. I would like to bypass senseless debate altogether and jump to the conclusion, which every sophomore is already aware of: there is no God. All that I require from each of you is that you fill in the papers I've just given you with 3 little words: God is dead. Mr. Wheaton, is something wrong?
I can't do what you want. I'm a Christian.
If you cannot bring yourself to admit that God is dead, then you will need to defend the antithesis.
I think of Jesus as my friend.
You think Jesus is God?
I don't want to disappoint him.
So your acceptance of this challenge may be the only meaningful exposure to God and Jesus they'll ever have.
To me, he's not dead. I don't want anyone to get talked out of believing in him just because some professor thinks they should.
Mr. Wheaton, are you ready?
We're going to put God on trial.
You think you're smarter than me, Wheaton? In that classroom, there is a God, and I'm him.
This experiment is over. You get to decide who the most important person in your life is. Me, Professor Radisson.
I have to do this thing. I feel like it's something that God wants me to do. I can't just turn away from it.
You just want to ensnare them in your primitive superstition.
What I want is for them to make their own choice. That's what God wants.
You have no idea how much I'm going to enjoy failing you.
Yeah, but who are you really looking to fail? Me or God?
God's not dead, he's surely alive.
Fascinating. I mean, so what sort of reaction have you been getting? I mean, that's very interesting. What I'm seeing there is you have a college professor telling kids to write an essay, God is dead. And then you have one kid in the class saying, no, I don't believe that. Yeah. So what sort of reaction?
Well, I think this movie has been a celebration of faith for people. It's funny, I mean, on our Twitter accounts, you know, there are emails and everything else, they come in, but this one lady said the other day, she said, you know, I was having a really bad day, and so I went to see God's Not Dead for the 8th time.
Wow. Wow.
And it encouraged me so. And so that's what we found in there, is that people in that theater experience have just been just encouraged in their faith. They walk in, whatever, feeling depressed or however they feel, and they walk out just cheering for the Lord. And that's a neat thing, you know. We have all these other stories just about, you know, somebody passed out, paramedics were called in, they stopped the movie, they literally all got around him and they prayed for him, they laid hands on him. Another one, the projector didn't go out, or went out, and the people all started singing hymns, you know. And so it's been more of just a movie. It's been almost an experience and a movement. It's been incredible.
And do you feel like, does this movie, does it reach beyond an audience that is already disposed to like this? I mean, is it a Christian movie, or does it reach beyond that, do you think? And is that your goal?
Our goal, first and foremost, is to serve the church in our films. But obviously, if it goes beyond that, you know, PureFlix is our company. We've been in business about 9 years, and we make these films, evangelistic films, to encourage believers, but also to use them as outreach tools to reach into their community and bring people that might not come to a Sunday morning service, but they will come to see a movie. And so that's been what we've found. A lot of you know, God's Not Dead it's such a broad title. You know, and it is, I saw this picture the other day about God's Not Dead on the London bus. I mean, how cool is that? I'll have to show you that picture. It's awesome. And it's, they did, in London, their whole campaign was God's Dead on these billboards. And then what they did is, a week before it came out, they crossed it off and put not. You know, but it's just amazing because it ignites conversation. It starts conversation. The tagline of this movie is, what do you believe? And so that's something for everybody. Obviously, we think it's the most important question that you can ever ask yourself. So.
And London is a fairly secular
world
over there.
Yeah.
And so you wonder how it would go. If it plays well
yeah, it's been doing great in UK, in the whole UK, yeah. It's been doing terrific.
It's interesting you say your market is, it could be for people who aren't going to church but have some religious connection.
Yeah.
And maybe people are willing to go see a movie, and we're seeing membership in churches decline, that kind of thing. But there's this hunger out there.
Yeah, there's a hunger, absolutely. And the amazing thing about cinema I love so much is that when those lights go down, you allow that movie to take you to places that you wouldn't even allow your best friend to take you. It's a safe zone, almost, so to speak. And so to be able to put the gospel out through a film, to put light through that cinema, and in a land that's been kind of very dark for many, many years, it's a cool thing.
And you've seen this growth. Where do you see it going? And when I say growth, I mean the growth of Christian film.
Yeah.
You started out doing the 50-minute things, and now mainstream release, winning awards, making $60 million in the box office. Where do you see it 10 years from now? Christian film.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because I've seen in 2000 we had a movie called Mercy Streets that came out theatrically, and it was just following up the Omega Code, and all of a sudden Omega Code was like in the top 10, which was an incredible thing, and then the Passion came out, and of course all the studios popped up and they all wanted faith-based labels, but they didn't really know how to make the movies, and then they would make the movies but they'd be bent in a certain way that the faith audience didn't get on board, and of course they shut down all those labels. Then The Blind Side came out 4 years later or 5 years later, and then everything opened up again, and so we've seen it come and go. So whether or not it is here to stay, I definitely more so than ever. I mean, the amount of faith films in the theaters this year definitely is unprecedented of any year before. But again, PureFlix, our company, continues just to make the films life-affirming, evangelistic movies, and whether they, whether Hollywood will do it or not, I don't know, but we pray that they will.
It seemed like for a while Hollywood's marketing plan was to make a movie that would be controversial, that perhaps would even get a boycott, and then that gets the buzz going and the talk.
Yeah.
And it wasn't their desire to make a movie that would be embraced by the Christian community. It was almost to
do the opposite. Yeah.
I mean, did you see that? And what do you think now? We just had Noah. And there was a lot of talk about Noah.
Noah was a whole kind of thing about that. I don't know if they set out to be controversial. I just think that they, they're like, hey, we're going to make a movie for the faith-based audience, like Noah, and then they hire, who they hired to direct it, Aronofsky, from the Black Swan. Like, I don't see the connection. I mean, from the day they released that in the trades, you're like, I don't understand your thought process here of how that's going to work. So I don't think that they're aiming for controversy. I just think that they're not really on the same page a lot of the times, and it just ends up chasing them.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I want to take a break. I want to come back and talk about what's it like to be a Christian in Hollywood. So we'll talk about that. Take a break. Be back right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to Issues of Faith. We're talking about the rise of Christian film, and we're happy to have with us David A.R. White, actor, producer, director of Christian films. And I wanted, as we went to the break, I wanted to ask about being a Christian in Hollywood. What is that like? Is it tough? Is it no big deal? What's it like to be a Christian in Hollywood?
Right now, it's a hot thing to be a Christian in Hollywood.
That's good.
It's been so funny, because we had a sense when God's Not Dead hit our Facebook, and I think it was late October. It got close to 10 million shares the first week. And so it was the #1 shared page in the world. So we had an idea that God's Not Dead was going to be, certainly spark an interest and be something. It was going to be something. And so we were excited to see going into it, because we had the knowledge, and then we had 1 million followers on Facebook, 2 million people talking about it, leading into almost $1 million in pre-sales before we even released. So the neat thing was to know this information beforehand. Now, granted, we were thinking maybe like 10 to 20 million in the box, which would have been a huge success for us. So we were excited to see how the trades would respond, seeing as they'd never heard of God's Not Dead, and they certainly never heard of PureFlix, or this little Christian movie, you know. And so, so come Monday morning, of course, it did 9.2 million the opening weekend. I think we were number 3 in the country against like screens with 3,000 plus, and we were on 750. We were like the little David against the Goliaths, literally. And so every paper, like in the country, all the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, everybody's like, where did this little thing come from, and what is God's Not Dead, and who are these people? You know, so it's been an interest. Everybody's very curious about being a Christian in Hollywood right now, and you know, when you make money, then they're like, well, you know, now we're interested in you, or we're interested in how can we make that money is more the thing. So, but PureFlix we're independently funded. So I am not, fortunately, I'm not driven or controlled by the Hollywood. I don't have to try to get a job from a studio or, you know, people that can control our content. Because again, it's independently funded with you know, so many wonderful Christian investors that have been part of us and have grown with us, and so that's it's a freeing place to be, and we're very thankful for that.
And you look at the success of God's Not Dead, a $3 million budget approximately, and you just said what you did opening weekend, 3 times that opening weekend, and you're going to be approaching 60 million. Yeah. But you talked about the number of screens. Yeah. So your mainstream Hollywood movie is going to be on what, thousands of screens.
3,000 plus.
You're on 750.
And we only started out, we were actually going to be on about 300, and then the church really got behind it and wanted more, and so they kept signing up more theaters that put us at the 750. We had no intention of going to 750 theaters at the beginning of our, you know, of the layout. It was literally the last 2 weeks leading up to it that the count grew.
I wanted to ask, I mean, how does that work? How do you get in theaters? I mean, that's you can't make it unless you get in a theater. I mean, if you're going to play in these, you know, leagues, you got to get in theaters. So how do you go about marketing it and getting it in those theaters?
Well, for us, marketing was very key. Obviously, social media was huge. And PureFlix has put a lot of films. We have a lot of partnerships with pastors all over the country, and so we use those partnerships, and we really put this film out to the gatekeepers, basically, to the pastors. We screened it for 8,000 pastors before we ever came out, to make sure that they, you know, that it was something that they could get behind. And I think they appreciated that, and that's where the support, you know, it was definitely a grassroots support.
That's interesting. So it is still the pastors and the churches. You're still seeing that kind of power from them when it comes to the commercial side of things.
Yeah, and what Hollywood doesn't really understand, though, is that they have to serve the church. They have to serve the audience what they desire to see. You know, Hollywood tries to take a movie. I mean, a perfect example is like, and I love Rocky Balboa, but they took Balboa, the last one, right, and they tried to take that in there. And this is one of many. But I had heard so many stories about that they would market it because, you know, Rocky has a prayer in the movie, so therefore church really should go out and support this movie. But you know, a pastor can't get up on the pulpit and say, please go see Balboa and this will help you in your faith, and this will, you know, he can't really endorse that movie and get behind it. And I think that's something that Hollywood doesn't quite comprehend.
But maybe they're learning. And you talk about right now, it's good to be a Christian in Hollywood. I mean, we've all read the anecdotes and the stories about it's hard to be a Christian in Hollywood. Sure, sometimes people don't get work as a result of, you know, professing their faith. I think there's some actors maybe in this movie that have said that. You know, have you encountered that? I mean, you're clearly a Christian. You've done a lot of Christian films, that kind of thing. Have you seen that? Have you seen a shift? I mean, kind of take us through your evolution.
It makes me laugh that clearly I am a Christian.
Clearly.
You know, it's funny because so many people say, I've had this conversation with a lot of different actors over the years, and who you know, they struggle with that. It's a very hard thing because their livelihood is based on somebody, a studio exec hiring them who probably doesn't necessarily agree with their beliefs. but I think that's where the Lord comes in, you know, and obviously there's a lot of trust there, and we have to stand up for what we believe, and ultimately it will hurt us in some circles, and it has hurt me in some circles, but on the other side, you know, that's the other reason why even I felt the Lord pushing me into all these other avenues that it wasn't comfortable for me to learn how to direct and produce and to write. That's not in my comfort zone at all. But I think God sometimes moves us out of our comfort zone into something that He has a bigger plan for us, and we just need to follow that leading. And when I landed in Hollywood, I was 19 years old. I was straight from Bible school. My dad was a Mennonite pastor. I had no movie background experience, you know, but it's just it's the American dream, and at the same time it's also that core verse that seek the Lord. Seek the Lord first, and you'll be amazed and surprised at what He'll do with your life.
And with the success, you know, this and other movies are having, is there more competition? I guess is there more going on?
Yeah. Well, obviously, there's a lot more going on. I mean, a lot of the studios are starting to really get on this and put more out, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's healthy for the marketplace. I think it's training, so to speak, the audience to actually go to a theater and support these type of movies and to enjoy them. You know, for years Hollywood would, you know, they'd throw one to the flyover state and they'd be like, let's make that one for the flyover states. You know. But I think now they're realizing that there actually is a marketplace, and that there is, and with that marketplace comes more creativity and more product.
So we have about a minute left. What is next? I mean, God's Not Dead, huge success in every aspect.
Thank you.
You know, huge success. So what's next? Are there other things that, you know, you're looking at, and where are you getting the material, and kind of what do you see next?
Yeah. Well, we have a movie called Believe that we're going into production right now. It will come out Easter 2015, so look for that movie. And it's all about the power of the cross, where what we thought was God's not dead really kind of, does God exist? What do you believe, right? And you kind of, the first step is that God does exist, and that He's relevant in your life. And if so, we want to take it to the next step of how. And what does that mean? Well, with God, right, comes Jesus and the cross. And what is the meaning of the cross and the power of the cross? And that's really what Believe is all about. So we're excited to move into production on that. And I was just saying, we actually just finished shooting a Billy Gardell dog movie, kind of like a Turner and Hooch. You know, PureFlix does faith and family films, and so this is just a wonderful family movie that's also coming out early 2015 called Dancer in the Dame.
Well, congratulations, and thank you. Thank you for being with us. Very interesting conversation. David A.R. White, actor, producer, director, writer. Thank you for watching Issues of Faith. Have a great day, everybody.